What was your worst date? I order water, she order a Coke. When the waiter left she burst into tears saying her and her ex-boyfriend used to get that same thing. Okay. After that she was inconsolable and thought I was going to ditch her when she went to the bathroom. She then tried to get me to go get her nipples pierced at the mall next to the restaurant we were at. Poor girl man. Lol. In college. We were supposed to have a coffee date. He arrived late. The conversation was torture because he didn't want to talk. He looked distracted. I asked him why. He said his buddies were drinking in his dorm and he wanted to go drink with them. I said, cool, you don't have to stay. He left. The end. Actually, that wasn't the worst. The worst was the dinner date I had at Applebee's or similar place. My date could not, for even a moment, stop talking about Dragon Ball Z. We were both about 20 years old. I didn't get to say anything. Shame because he was super handsome. We went for drinks. Conversation went well. About an hour in, her phone rings, she picks up and has a full-blown 15-minute argument with her boyfriend. I mean, lying about their relationship status is one thing, but actually taking the call while trying to cheat kinda blew my mind. Years ago, I matched with a guy on Match.com and went on a date. The conversation was strained, and all he did was talk about his soon-to-be ex-wife. He was clearly still in love with her. After dinner, he walked me to my car and tried to lean in for a smooch. As he was leaning in, he grabbed me by my waist and was grabbing for my butt. I managed to push him away and just looked him in the eye, and said nope, we're not going there. This is where we say good night. We went our separate ways and neither one of us contacted the other after. Fast forward a week, and I saw on the local news that he had been murdered. He had shown up at his ex's house and was getting violent with her and threatening her. Her new boyfriend shot and killed him. The boyfriend was found not guilty. I had a date with a new guy who had an Airbnb for his birthday and was throwing himself a party. I brought a cake, wine, and coffee I had just roasted for him. It had been raining steadily with high winds and I had to park my car several blocks away. It turned out there was no party, just us. He brought no food, drinks, or party supplies, but had a huge bag of toys. When he suggested ordering takeout, the first place he suggested was McDonald's, followed by Wawa, a convenience store. This was a 50-year-old man with a job, BTW. Not necessarily the worst, but a fun story. She was Korean, had a strong accent, and didn't speak English super well. We met at a coffee shop, and had coffee briefly, then she said something like I have some errands to do, but I'm having fun and want you to come with me. Throughout her errands, she was asking me what the proper words for things are, before we went in places. And when we were in stores, she'd speak to the employees through me. Turns out she literally just used me as a translator, and then left. According to my phone history, she unmatched about 5 minutes after we sat down for coffee originally. Guy took me to see his dying grandmother. Everyone was standing around crying while grandma laid in bed unconscious. The nurse in charge was some random girl from my high school who recognized me and made some snide comment about me being a theater geek. Grandma did pull through and lived for like 6 more months. I took a girl out. Asked her what her interests were. Don't have any. Any hobbies? No. What do you do besides uni? Not much. Are you enjoying your course? I don't really like talking about uni. Followed by a long uncomfortable silence. Wasn't necessarily the date, which was bad on its own, but the fact that she hung out in my parking lot for 2 hours after she dropped me off in case I changed my mind about doing something after dinner. That's creepy AF. Went on blind date. My buddy forgot to ask the date where she was from. When I asked, she named an extremely small town that you really only know of if you're an extended member of my family. Turned out she was a second or third cousin. Met a girl at a bar one Saturday night. Had a couple of drinks with her, took her back to her place, she invited me in. We casually hung out another hour or so, talking, before both of us got sleepy. She invited me to stay, nothing sexual, so I didn't have to drive tired. Very thoughtful. I woke and left the next morning before she woke up herself. I called her during the next week and set up a date for that next Thursday. I went back to her apartment to pick her up. As she opened the door, a weird look came over her face, but I brushed it off. We went out to dinner about 40 minutes from her apartment. Conversation in the car was a little more labored than it had been the night I met her, and this tone carried over to the time we were at dinner. A couple of times I brought something up. She was surprised I knew that aspect of her life. I mentioned that these were things she had told me about herself the previous weekend. She looked dumbfounded each time. Then it began to click. I bluntly asked her if she remembered anything about our night together. She sheepishly admitted she didn't. She was apparently blackout drunk when I met her, though she didn't exhibit any signs. I pressed her by asking who did you think was showing up tonight? She then admitted she had spoken to another guy before me and had thought he was the one who had called her to set up the date. Hence the puzzling look when I picked her up. That was it for me. I couldn't wait to get out of there. I quickly finished my meal. I probably left half of it there and got the check. We walked out past a cab stand and a part of me was willing to put her in a cab for the ride home. Being a gentleman though, I brought her home to her apartment, silent all the way. Upon getting out of my car, the only thing I said to her was that, perhaps, you might want to control your drinking. What a night. My college BF and I took a trip to Seattle for Valentine's Day, circa 2010. When we arrived I had a horrible allergic reaction to the soap in the hotel we stayed at, but powered through all that to go to dinner where he had made reservations for us. We got to the table, sat down, he looked at the Valentine's Day menu and stated he couldn't afford this place. I cannot accurately describe how mortified I was as we left. Okay, well that's shitty planning on his part. That sounds horribly awkward. Went to a piano bar with a girl I had been talking to online for like 3 weeks. Seemed like we were really hitting it off, and we're probably going to get together for real soon. She mentioned she was going out for her birthday, and I said something joking about going. She said come on. We're going to piano bar, you can meet my friends. I dressed up, and made my way there. I sat down next to her, and said hey happy birthday. She looked at me like I was absolutely crazy, and her friends stopped talking and all looked at me confused. I thought maybe she doesn't want to tell people about the whole online thing, so I whispered to her behind her back who I was. She went oh, and that was basically the last word I got out of her the rest of the night. I used no fake pictures, no touch-ups, no weight gain or loss. I looked exactly the same as the picture I used. Her friends started asking about me, and I tried to at least be good conversation. It was amazingly awkward for everyone, and her drunk friend kept going wait, so whore again. And asked that about 10 times. About 45 minutes and I said I was going to the bathroom. Luckily I was good buddies with one of the piano guys playing that night, and he snuck me out the back when I told him about what was happening. I met a friend who was close by for about 30 more minutes, and I finally was like I've had enough of a bad night. I left and literally ran into their group walking the opposite way towards me. Everyone walked awkwardly past again, and her drunk friend said hey wasn't that guy? And they all whispered and laughed. I legit felt so horrible for a long time after that. I'm not the best in big groups with new people, so that was just anxiety to a 40. No idea why she was so weird about me showing up even though she asked me to come along. I still cringe, and that was like probably 13 to 14 years ago. Went on my first Tinder date after my divorce. I got married at 19 and divorced 8 years later, so I didn't know much about the dating world and I had no clue what catfishing even was. I met him for coffee and he looked nothing like the guy from the Tinder pic. I didn't say anything and just talked to him like a friend, had coffee and we played tennis. After the date I told him that I was still healing from my divorce and not ready to date. He responded with something along the lines of F you. You're on Tinder, you want D. Blah blah blah. I was shocked that he had the audacity to blow up after he straight catfished me. Looking back at this 6 years later I can't believe I was so stupid and naive to go anywhere with the creep. Could have been a damn serial killer. I was super naive, went on a blind date with a lady who wouldn't stop picking at her scabs. Just made a pile out of them on the restaurant table. I excused myself to use the washroom and when I came back my soup was there but the pile of scabs wasn't. No, I didn't eat the soup. Went to eat dinner with a guy and as a vegan I had to order a dish with no meat/eggs. The guy started telling me that for our next date I was gonna eat eggs, and then the next one meat, etc. Psycho. The date itself was fine, but what I found out after was bad. I went on a date with a guy, had an okay time and thought I'd go out with him again if he asked. He did, but the dates never happened because he always had some crazy excuse, so I told him I wasn't interested. A few years later, last year, I got a message from an unknown number which was just an emoji and I ignored it. The next morning I get a WhatsApp message apologizing for him being self-centered, not ready for a relationship and not the man I should have met years ago, and that he was thinking about me and wanted to reach out to see if we could try again because he's a changed man. I politely declined and he left me alone. Later, I looked him up online. Turns out he's been scamming women he dates, telling them he has an investment opportunity, taking their money and disappearing, defrauding landlords and squatting in their apartments and scamming businesses pretending he is a metalworks company, going to sites to do an estimate for a job, sending an invoice for a deposit and running with the money. I think I dodged a bullet. A guy I met on Plenty of Fish. We went for dinner, which was nice, then he suggested a casino for drinks. He proceeded to gamble for an hour while I sat and waited. Eventually I got up and left. I'm not even sure if he noticed. There was no second date. New Year's Eve 2007. I invited my date to my job's New Year's party. I got so wasted that I passed out after taking my 9th shot of Everclear. I woke up on a couch in a back room with my date sitting next to me with a trash can. My stomach starts rumbling and he had to carry me to the bathroom because I couldn't walk in my heels. He held me up while I started taking a dump. While I was taking a dump, I started throwing up all over his feet. So my cousin, who was also at the party, was called to the bathroom to assist him. As I finished taking a dump, she held me up so he could wipe my ass. My cousin never lets me forget that story. Yes, we dated for a while before he moved to another state. Since then Everclear has been banned in my state. I was a broke college student. Went out with a guy on a date after he talked about this cool new restaurant that opened up and agreed beforehand that I'd pay. He ended up ordering something expensive, had 2 cocktails, starter, and couldn't decide between 2 desserts, so bought both. Said afterwards thought I'd treat myself since someone else was paying. I had £14 left in my account until I got paid the next month. When she ordered a salad and then proceeded to eat the food off my plate. Like, bitch, if you hungry, order actual food. Went on a Tinder date in Japan. She spent the day talking about how she thinks that her father killed her mother. Took me to a real shady place owned by the Yakuza, and she kept ordering shit to the point that I realized the restaurant was trying to extort money from me and she was in on it. I tried to leave ASAP. Then she asked if she could borrow money from me. I just stood up and left. When I left, I kept getting on and off trains going in different directions as I was paranoid that I was being followed before going home.